We are going to move into our last panel, and that is our key spouse best practices. So we're really excited for this one. Our facilitator is Miss Theresa Galvan. She's a community readiness analyst in the Airmen and Family Readiness Operations Division at the Air Force Personnel Center. So Miss Galvan, over to you.
Thanks so much, Randy. I'm so glad to be here today, and I cannot wait to hear about the best practices. Thank you to those 8 panelists that took time out of their busy schedules today to share their best practices. We just appreciate you so much. Each panelist will have approximately 3 to 5 minutes to share their stories. And after they finish, then we will have time for question and answers. If you would like to ask a question, just in the chat box, put who it's directed to and what the question is. So let's get started. Our first panelist is Brigadier General Doug Schiess and his wife, Debbie. Over to you, sir, ma'am.
Hey, good morning. Thanks, Theresa, and thanks to everyone for being here. I know it's pretty early for some and pretty late for others, so thanks for allowing us the opportunity to talk to you today. My wife, Debbie, and I have been involved with the Key Spouse program since the very beginning. When it first started, I was an operations officer in a squadron, and we decided that together, and then Debbie wanted to be to continue what she was already doing, which is helping military spouses and their families, and so we thought this was a great idea. So she went through the training. She's going to go over a best practice that we've done at a previous base when we were the wing commander at Patrick Air Force Base, now Patrick Space Force Base, and she's going to discuss that. But I just wanted to give you a perspective from the commander, especially for a new commander. There are a lot of things that they are responsible for right away, and their mind is in a million different places, probably like yours are when school starts or whatever, starting a new job. That's just where they're at. And so they've got to go through and find out priorities and different things. And so what I would suggest for key spouse, especially if you're already in place or you're thinking about being a key spouse, is just offer to the commander. Can I meet with you? Can I bring the key spouses together so you can have that first initial meeting? Because then that'll put it on their calendar and they'll start working with you. And any commander that sees someone that's a force multiplier and getting things done is going to want to continue that process. And so while they may not reach out to you right away, although we tell them to in the training, but ask them to do that so that they can get that going and that you can help them be a part of that. Bring whatever you have to them. They like that. And so that'll help them continue to get this program, either if it's already going great at that squadron or not, turn it around. And so with that, I'm going to turn over to Debbie to talk about our best practice.
So the best practice that we've been asked to share is a training procedure that we have implemented. You all know that typically commanders get trained on key spouse issues differently than key spouses get trained. And one of the fall through places that we saw is often getting them all on the same page. And so we have done this now several times of doing a training, scenario-based training with the commander, senior enlisted leader, first sergeant, and key spouse all sitting around the table working a problem together. It allows you to consider who plays what role in any kind of situation. We've done things from mental health issues all the way to death scenarios. Especially tragedies, we don't want to think about those things and then we suddenly find ourselves in the midst of them and we haven't figured out who's going to do what. It really helps get everybody on the same page. The other thing that this type of training really we have seen a big impact is on commanders seeing the roles that key spouses play. I had a lot of feedback from commanders saying, I didn't get it before. I knew that I was supposed to have one, but I didn't see how valuable a part of the team the key spouse could be. The other thing I want to encourage is running scenarios on things that we have seen maybe the key spouse program hasn't been as strong in. The Women's Initiative team brought to attention that maybe we aren't focused enough on single parents or airmen and guardians in the dorms. So this allows that kind of scenario to be played through and us to talk through how can we better serve those populations. One thing that I would suggest is if this is something that you're interested in, is bringing it up to your leadership. These scenarios, we can help you with those. We are not the first people, I'm sure, who have done this kind of training, but it allows the whole team to get on the same page, and we've really seen the value in that.
Yeah, so I would say too, as the key spouse, if you go to your commander and he's like, how do we do this? Or maybe we should do this at a higher level on the Air Force at the group or wing level, in the Space Force at the Delta level. Bring in that Airmen Family Readiness Center to maybe bring you together to help you to do that, because then there's the crosstalk with the other command teams. And maybe there's some command teams that have already gone through some of these situations. And so then they can provide some lessons learned. And so it's just a great opportunity to get together, to be able to talk through. And again, that Airmen and Family Readiness Center can help you do that. Once again, as a former commander, I just want to say, once you see the value of a key spouse in a situation, you're always going to want to have a key spouse on your team. And so if you're in a situation where maybe your commander is not quite there yet, keep pushing, bringing them together. And that command team with the senior enlisted leader, the SHIRT, the commander, and the key spouse, there's probably just nothing that they can't do together. And so we really appreciate the time today to bring forward our best practice, and look forward to any questions. Thank you.
So thank you so much. And the next speaker we have is Major General Slocum and his wife, Xavi.
Morning, everybody. Xavi and I are practicing distributive ops right now, but Mrs. Brown, Mrs. Raymond, thank you so much for having us, give us a chance to speak. Are humbled listening to all the briefings this morning. Really an amazing lineup. And to all the key spouses and everybody, thank you so much for what you're doing. You all figure out pretty quick here in the next 4 minutes that I married up, and the brains of my operation and Team Slocum is going to speak the second half of this. So Xavi and I have been teaching the Key Spouse program, the Commander's courses here at ACC for the last 3 years. Doug and Debbie, hats off to you. That I'm a huge believer in what you just briefed. We put the squadron commanders through scenarios. If anybody needs them, I wrote a set of scenarios in 2014 that we use to build these relationships at Team Seymour. And all the scenarios we wrote are just teeth-sucking bad situations that were all real world things that had happened to me or my co-wing commanders back in the day. So we can post that in here, Doug. If you don't have a list of scenarios, I have some that we can put up as well. But that is, I'm a huge believer in what you guys just briefed. That's awesome. To everybody, we looked at what we wanted to pick out from an hour-and-a-half course on to share as best practice. And I think from the commander's point of view, it's really the relationship. How do we foster the relationship between the spouses and the key spouses? That's what makes an effective key spouse program. We don't just need a key spouse program. We need it to be effective so that the sensors are out there to pick up the soft signals to give to the commander so it gets to the right place, and giving the support to the commanders that need it. So I think the thing that the commanders can do and the key spouses should ask their commanders to do is make it easy for the key spouses. So the first thing it makes me think of is there's so much misinformation that Key Spouse program is just for deployments. That is so not true. Key Spouse is a year-round program. There's an Army general that says you can't requisition trust and you can't surge a friendship. I think that applies to the Key Spouse program. So I think it really starts even before people arrive to a base. The first thing I would say for us, we got a lot wrong before we got it right. One of the things that helped us out is we found that putting a list on the squadron wall, with these 800-person AMXSs, and having a list of 10 key spouses on the wall, it says, hey, if your spouse is having any problems, contact one of these people. That was not effective. It was much more effective for us when we assigned a personal key spouse to each spouse, that, hey, this is your key spouse, and then here are the backups to call if for some reason you want to call somebody else. And we started to put that into our sponsor letter. Each commander has a sponsor package that they send out to people before they arrive in the unit, whether they're in Korea or Grand Forks, wherever, before they come to the unit. They send them a key spouse, they send them a sponsor package. And in the letter from the commander, we added a paragraph in the middle to all the people that had spouses that said, your spouse's key spouse is this person, and this is their contact information. And that starts it off right from the get. And you put in there, your commander's discretion on what to put in. This person can help you with finding who the school liaison officer is if you have kids in schools. On job employment, staying with the theme of today, what are the different assets the key spouse can help get you to the right people. I know the key spouses aren't required to know all the information. They're required to know who to get people to get that information, like all the resources we heard today. And one step further is a key spouse can write his or her own letter and put it in, and you can staple it right below the commander's letter, or an attachment if you're emailing your sponsor package, right below the commander's letter. A letter straight from the key spouse to the spouse in, hey, this is me, I'm your personal key spouse, here's my contact information, this is what I'm here for. But that went a long way to start the relationship. It's a lot easier to catch them before they come in versus once they're already set up and they've got their routine and everything, they're less inclined sometimes to ask for help. So overall, I think from there, if that relationship's built from the beginning with a direct assignment of a specific key spouse, and you introduce those connections early on, then once they get there, the commander can set up the events and all the things to let the key spouses do their magic. So that being said, over to my better half.
Thank you, Mark. Another technique that we discuss in the ACC Squadron Commander course is the spouse to key spouse ratio. And that ratio essentially is the commander looking at exactly how many spouses do you have total in the squadron and how many key spouses do you want to assign to that. So that spouse to key spouse ratio sweet spot that we found was about a 1 to 25 ratio. So 1 key spouse to about 25 spouses. That's about a phone call a month, and really lets those key spouses determine what are those issues that spouses are facing. Like, is there a miscarriage? Did somebody just lose a job? What are those CCIRs or trigger points that the commander wants to hear about? And you really hear about those with a lower key spouse to spouse ratio. And then how do you recruit to that number? So for example, if you have a unit that has 100 spouses and you're shooting for about 4 key spouses, how do you recruit to those 4 key spouses? So we discussed 4 recruiting ideas, for example, of inviting the key spouses to the commander's welcome, inviting the key spouses to the squadron newcomer. If you have a family squadron barbecue, inviting the key spouses to that family squadron barbecue so that they could meet other spouses and build those relationships. And it's just like a job, it's networking. When you meet someone that you think has a great personality, that key spouse may be able to help the commander recruit and find another key spouse that way and say, hey, sir, ma'am, I met this spouse, she's phenomenal. I recommend her as a key spouse to you just based on this conversation. And then finally, using social media as a marketing tool. So perhaps making a position description and the commander posting it on the spouse Facebook group or on the squadron Facebook group to say that you have a position vacancy, this is a job description, and that you're open to interview candidates for that. So those are some 4 recruiting techniques that we talk about. We also discuss spouse networking opportunities. We find that key spouses want to build those relationships, right? So that squadron barbecue that we talked about is one, but some bases already have networking opportunities already built in, like FSS, Halloween's around the corner, there's trunk or treat. So maybe the key spouses could meet with the spouses at that trunk or treat. It's a free event. You just show up and meet and build that rapport. Or there are children's holiday parties that happen. So use those free events that are on the base as an opportunity to make those connections. And then also, if the commander wants to offer a brown bag lunch for those spouses and the key spouses at the commander's conference room, they will come and they'll give those key spouses an opportunity to make those relationships. And so finally, the last point I want to make is that diversity and inclusion is a critical discussion point right now across the Air and Space Force. And it's not only for Airmen, Guardian, Guard, and Reserve, but it's also for spouses as well. And something that we did at ACC, they had a Sword Athena and a spouse inclusivity mog where General Kelly targeted, he wanted to help us get after making same-sex spouses and male spouses feel included. So not only as key spouses and mentors are we ambassadors of our unit, we're ambassadors of the Air and Space Force to those families for family inclusivity. So that's the final point I just want to leave you on, and making everyone feel like they're a part of the team. And Mark and I just want to thank you for the opportunity today. We look forward to hearing to our other panel members. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's so much good information to share. We really appreciate your time. Our third panelist is Mr. Tom Bozung. Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Theresa. So good morning from the Space Coast. So I am a key spouse mentor with the 45th Medical Group here at Patrick Space Force Base. Been involved in the key spouse program for about 5 years. I was active duty myself for about 12. And then for about the last 9, I've been following my wife around wherever she heads. So, or wherever the Air Force sends her. So for my two best practices, the two things that I've always found difficult in the Key Spouse program is building trust with the other spouses so that they trust, they feel like they can reach out to you, as well as them knowing that there's even that resource out there. And then also obtaining their contact info. The first one I want to tackle was the building trust. I have found no better way than for them to see you. And so while social events are not a requirement for Key Spouse program to plan and modify, I find it highly effective to partner and to try to always be present so that they see your face and they get to know you. Especially as a male spouse, I feel like the barriers are sometimes higher to get that to break through that trust. However, I'll also say that as a male spouse, I find that once I break through those barriers, the expectation management is also lower. I remember bringing a fruit tray to an event, and all the other spouses were amazed that they looked like little Grinches, Christmas hats, and they're like, "Oh, you did this yourself?" And I was like, "It was fruit. I cut it up and put it on a stick." And then I was like, I saw it off Pinterest, and then they were blown away with that. So I find that there's disadvantages and advantages of being a male spouse. But it's not also just being present. You have to talk to them, as well as I found being present and being visible are different things. So I try to wear a Key Spouse name tag when I'm at different events so that they recognize. If you get one person that comes up and asks, hey, what's the Key Spouse program? You're one person further ahead than you were without wearing the name tag. And I really started that after I was at an event with my wife. We were handing out treats, and the young airmen thought I was the commander spouse, but didn't really know how to ask a male spouse if I was the spouse. And so the way they phrased it was, she came up and she's like, are you Colonel, or do you have the same last name as Colonel Bozung? And I was like, yes. And in fact, I had it before her. So, so I have found, if they feel that uncomfortable, like your other spouses may not, feel that comfort level, having a name tag might be the breaking point. So being visible and being present are very big events. But with that, getting attendance is also hard. So getting attendance at different events and to hit your audience is difficult. And COVID makes that no easier. And so one of the things that I wanted to propose is a success that we have had that is to some extent COVID compliant. Mrs. Slocum just talked about a trunk or treat, and we did a drive-through trunk or treat. And what we did is we set up a one-way path through the organization parking lot. We tried to increase participation from not just the family members, but also the young airmen they want to decorate their cars. And so we offered a couple small prizes to judge the cars. And so all the kids that come through get to judge the cars. And then we get small prizes that helped increase participation, and you can spread the cars out so they're not on top of each other, and you're COVID compliant. And then another thing we wanted to do is we still wanted the kids to be involved to some extent. So at the beginning, before they ever start driving through, we have a kind of a point where they stop, and we have a little photo booth. So, a couple hay bales and some pumpkins, and you can deplane or decar the one family at a time, and they take it. We took pictures. You can put those pictures up on the group Facebook page and do a voting contest for the costumes. And so that's a way that they can still be involved, but you're keeping everybody separate. And then once they got back in, we gave them a voting sheet, and they got to go through and slowly drive and vote on their favorite trunk. And then when they get to the end, we had the leadership, both officer and enlisted, that kind of handed out treat bags. Couple things that you can do. So you can put your Key Spouse contact information on the treat bags. And then I'm going to get to my obtaining contact information. So one of the tricks, I can't like claim to this. It was another Key Spouse that at another unit that brought it up, and I was like, that's genius. So a lot of times when you ask spouses, can I get your contact information for Key Spouse, they're automatically hesitant. They either don't know enough about the program or they don't trust you enough. But I have this other Key Spouse had found, but they're very willing for a $20 gift certificate to Starbucks. So you have some kind of guessing contest, which works perfectly for Halloween. You can be, like how many candy corns are in the jar, and they leave their guess. and because they're driving through, you're not going to know the right answer until the end. So they have to leave their name, their phone number, their email address. And you now have effectively for $20 collected a lot of spouse contact information. Now, I will say, to be respectful, when you do reach out with that information, always give them the opportunity to then decline further, whether you're sending out newsletters or monthly emails or something like that. So it's being a bit sneaky, but after you've obtained the information, I think it's respectful to push that out and let them know accordingly. But I think those kind of cover my two little best practices. So thank you.
And our fourth panelist is Miss Taryn Coakley. Taryn.
Hi, I am Taryn Coakley. Thank you, Theresa. I am the spouse of Lieutenant Colonel Josh Coakley. He's the current commander of the 726th Air Mobility Squadron here in Spangdahlem, Germany. So it's too late for coffee for me and too early for beer. So kind of in this water territory, I guess. I have the honor of being the key spouse mentor for our squadron. I've been attached to the Air Force life for 13 years, and I've been part of squadrons that I've felt really supported, and I've been part of squadrons that I've kind of felt more isolated. So I am genuinely passionate about ensuring our squadron feels supported and engaged with and informed during our 2 years in command. So when you decide to take on the role of key spouse or key spouse mentor, it can feel overwhelming. Even though you genuinely want to support the squadron. So one of the things that has helped me in the past is to really focus on getting organized and leveraging templates. So I like to think about the things that I should do in the first 30 days of becoming that key spouse mentor that will set me up long-term for success. I'll walk through a couple examples and you'll kind of hear that some of my thoughts are aligned with some of the panelists that you already heard from. So establishing a meeting cadence with the commander and the first sergeant. I know that was mentioned just to get yourself in there and on the calendar. You definitely want to make sure everyone is aligned on a plan to meet with you on a consistent basis so that you're all on the same page with regards to events, activities, happenings in the squadrons, things like that. So definitely get on that calendar and not just for the first time, but get on that calendar for a recurring meeting. Monthly is probably great. Again, this is mentioned, but think about recruitment strategies. So if you land in a spot where the key spouse team is not to that right ratio, as Mrs. Slocum presented, think about ways to recruit more key spouses. Leverage the commander and the first sergeant to make a call for volunteers. I know that can be more difficult with COVID because there's less in-person events, but there's certainly ways to post on the Facebook page, make announcements, at commanders calls and things like that, even if it's virtual, just to explain what the Key Spouse program is and get some more people that want to engage with the program. Third one, this is a big one, introducing the Key Spouse team. And I came up with a template to kind of do that in a fun and visual way. So this is probably hard to see, but basically I had my key spouse team, send me their pictures and send some answers to questions. How long have you been attached to the Air Force? Why did you want to be a key spouse? What's your favorite vacation? And then you kind of have this visual representation of your key spouse team along with kind of these attributes about them to make them feel more human and more approachable. Because as you heard, sometimes it can be scary to reach out, right? So the name tag, just knowing who the person is, things like that can really help you to get your key spouse team out there. You can put that up on Facebook, and then you can break out the roster, and do a similar thing with contact information and essentially say, I'm responsible for A through F. Jessica's responsible for this letter through this letter. So if your last name falls within that letter in the squadron, this is the person that you should reach out to, and here's their contact information. And not only do you give that to the spouse community, but the key spouses then know who they're reaching out to on a regular basis. And so that helps with kind of that two-way communication. Another thing that I found to be successful is sending a survey to the spouse community, because I'm all about data and leveraging data. And so if you ask them what their preferences are for events or activities or communication, even, how do you want us to contact you? Is it Facebook? Is it WhatsApp? We live overseas. Or is it just email? And then leveraging that data to then act on it. And so that makes them feel like they're heard, and you're creating a plan that's more successful for you. And there are free things out there like Google Forms that you can leverage to do a survey like that. Lastly, establishing a regular cadence of communication and engagement. So Facebook and email is definitely two ways to do that. So creating like a Facebook content calendar. So we're overseas, as I mentioned, and so we have like a travel tip Tuesday and a fun fact Friday. And on Sundays, we kind of put together some things that we've seen that are happening on base. And so we're regularly posting on Facebook so that you can essentially see what's happening and feel engaged in that general conversation and create more of a sense of community, especially with COVID and not being able to see each other. So this will feel like people are more comfortable with you when they do actually get to see you in person, because that online community plays that role. So as I mentioned, I'm particularly passionate about driving consistent execution from squadron to squadron and base to base, because it's really hard when you land somewhere and you feel like you're starting over, or you're reinventing the wheel because, their program might not be in the same place that the last program you were at was. So I've been fortunate to be part of some broader conversations around driving easier implementation of the program. And I'm really hopeful that in the near term, we'll be providing key spouses with specific tools and templates that will enable them to spend less time executing the program. And so that will still result in more success, but it'll just be easier. I know someone mentioned that we want to make this easier. So we all have a lot of balls in the air and it's a volunteer role. So the easier we can make it, I think the more beneficial for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Taryn. That was fabulous. Our fifth speaker is Miss Jayme Killorem. Jayme, over to you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Today I'm going to talk more about the how you can do more resilience in key spouse training. So I've been an active duty spouse for 13 years, a key spouse for about 12. I coordinate our spouse resilience program here at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and it's called Resilient by Design. I'm also a master resilience trainer, and I also work at the Airmen and Family Readiness Center doing programs like the Key Spouse Program and the spouse employment. Resilience training has really helped not only my family in our military lifestyle, but also just in our everyday lifestyle as well. As spouses, we're expected to be resilient all the time, I feel like, through our moves, through what we experience as spouses. It's not always easy, and there's not always something available at every base that I've been to as far as resilience goes and the Key Spouse program. So I kind of started looking around and then found that the Air Force has a really great resilience program. And they focus a lot on values, strengths, resilient thinking, focus, and attention. And our spouse resilience program here at DM follows that same curriculum. It's about self-awareness, cognition, positive outlook, and perspective. Our motto is preparation for what might come, recovery for in the moment. I just needed that recovery right then and there. So recovery for in the moment, and then growing from that adversity that we may face. Davis-Monthan, like others, I'm sure, most bases are this way, it's committed to mission readiness, and our spouses aren't aware of what that means. So our hope here is to help the spouses gain knowledge on what that means. We want to educate spouses on what the active duty members are doing on a day-to-day basis, what they may experience when they go on TDYs or deployments, what it looks like for a deployment that they're staying at their base, but they're still deployed. So a lot of different circumstances that may come up, we want to make sure that we educate those spouses. And then we encourage them that encourages them to support the active duty member and the mission overall. We want to help our spouses develop their resilience skills, and that looks like just being able to combat stressors that may come their way. Military families experience the strain of long hours, TDYs, PCS moves. You guys heard all about what different challenges we may face as military families earlier today. By providing them with this knowledge, it can alleviate the stress, and that's all through our own emotional awareness. And then the program also provides them with an activity that helps them build that community support that I heard about earlier, the networking, it expands all of that, building their community connections. And then we encourage them to go and practice what they've learned, these resilience skills, to grow and be more resilient in the end. So take a second to think about all of the challenges we face. There's so many. We talked about some of them. Education is impacted. Our careers are impacted as spouses. There's no optimum time to train us. We don't get the break like military members do to go to these trainings. And then childcare. Childcare is always an issue. So these are just a few of the challenges we face as military spouses. Our goal overall is to cultivate a strong military spouse community that is ready to meet all of those challenges. So through that education and developing those skills, that's what we hope to do. We want to foster mental, physical, social, and that spiritual growth to be more resilient through these obstacles we face. Our last event that we just had for our spouse resilience program consisted of the main focus for resilience was mindfulness. We focused on deployments as far as our mission piece, educating them on all the resources available on the base, off the base, talking about some of the issues that may arise during that time. And then we were able to do the mindfulness presentation, and then we had a yoga instructor for our activity. We had all of that provided by our civic leaders here at Davis-Monthan, and they were able to provide all of the food, our yoga mats that they gave every attendee, and then notebooks for them to go and further practice their mindfulness activities. And then for childcare, we just had the children in an adjacent room because we didn't want to discourage spouses that couldn't come due to childcare. So we try to accommodate wherever we can. And then we had them monitored there. So resilience programs overall falls under the community support coordinator. The community support coordinator is located at every base. Every wing has one. So whether it's Space Force, Air Force, you can find your CSC anywhere. And resilience training will also fall under the wing's community action team. The key spouses can go to their community support coordinators and find ways to do their RTA training, whether it's together as a group or whether they're going in with the active duty members and obtaining that training. And then virtually, you can obtain your MRT training or master resilience training virtually through the program that they have as well. So if you have any questions, just go to your community support coordinator at your base and ask them, say, hey, I'm interested in getting the RTA training. We don't have anything for our spouses here for resilience. Can we go ahead and start something up? And that's how you would be able to start it. And you can always reach out to me if you have any questions. So thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to talk to you on this important matter. It's important so that together we can cultivate a strong military spouse community.
Thanks so much, Jayme. That was so much information in such a short period of time. You did a fabulous job. Our sixth panelist is Mr. Rob Bandy. Over to you, Mr. Bandy.
Thank you guys very much for just for having me and giving me a chance to talk here a little bit to everybody with the whole 9 yards. So just a little bit about myself. My wife's been in now for almost 18 years, and I've been a key spouse for about the last 5 or so. It finally came to a point where I felt like as a male inside the Key Spouse program, I wasn't getting the support or help that I thought I should. And my wife finally looked at me one night and said, either stop your bitching or do something about it. So here I am. I'm a key spouse now. I'm doing something about it. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit tonight just about male spouses and how to get them more involved and those kind of things. So the biggest thing going on right now with male spouses is there's more of us. It's a growing number within the military. Either that's through mill to mill, that's through stay-at-home dads like myself, and then you have the LGBTQ community also. So you're just going to have more males now in the military that are more of that spouse role, that are more in that home role. So how do we deal with that? How do we find a way to make them feel included? How do we find a way to get them involved? Let me just tell you, just because I'm a male, it doesn't work any easier for me. I struggle with it too. It's something, I thought for sure when I got involved that all the guys would come out of the woodwork and they'd show up to everything I was doing, and they didn't. So that's pretty much the way it ended up working out for me. So I was like, well, why aren't guys coming? What are we doing wrong? And I really started to look at what I was doing, what other key spouses were doing. And I'm just going to give you guys some things that worked for me. And number one is sometimes we say, hey, we're holding a spouse event and you're invited. To a lot of guys, unfortunately, the word spouse means wife. It's just one of those things that happens. So I started addressing when I'd send an email out for an event or anything I was doing, I would say, hey, all husbands and wives that support a military member, you guys are invited to an event we're doing. And I started getting a couple, and I was like, cool, this kind of works a little bit. Then I started looking at what we were calling events. I can remember when a couple of my kiddos were young, we were at a base, and they did these mommy and me play dates, like at the playgrounds on base. You know, they would do these during the summer and stuff. And I'll never forget, I showed up to one, and one of the women said, "Can we help you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm here for the mommy and me thing." And she kind of looked at me like, "Well, you know, you're a dad, you're not a mom." And I went, "Really? I hadn't noticed that. Thank you. I was confused, but I appreciate you telling me that." But it just, because it was called Mommy and Me, I was instantly felt not welcome. And ever since then, when I see events like that, it's something where I just don't feel comfortable even trying to go to do those things. So how we're labeling our events. And then lastly is how we advertise our events. How are we, when we send out something that has pictures in it for a barbecue we're doing, or for something we're doing, does it have pictures of dads in uniform, or does it have some dads who are just in civilian clothes, you know, to kind of represent that stay-at-home dad or that spouse who is male, to where he doesn't feel like, hey, I'm going to this event and it's going to be all females. And then the last one that I think is probably the most important one, and I've learned my lesson on, if I'm 100% honest, and it worked in my house too, if I'm completely honest, is you have to make the man's spouse feel comfortable with you and your organization. And what I mean by that is there are women out there, when I'm talking specifically about male spouses here, that they're not exactly comfortable with their husband coming to an event where he's going to be the only man in the room. You know, there's rumors, there's all kinds of things in the military and everything else, and maybe they're just not comfortable with that. And what ended up happening in our own house is, in the beginning of my wife's career, I did not do anything with key spouses, with any programs going on inside the squadron. But we had one key spouse who reached out specifically to my wife and made her feel comfortable with them, and then made me feel comfortable to the point where my wife was pushing me out the door to go to the events. So just one tip there that I kind of learned. And then lastly is remembering the most important thing. You may not get all the males to show up for all your events and everything there, but our job as key spouses really is to be able to be there for the families when they need us, to be there when they need the information they need, whether it's something, it's been a traumatic experience they're going through, or maybe it's just something like what we've been talking about, struggling to get a job, struggling to find work, doing those things because of the PCS and everything else going on. We just need to be able to have that contact information, to be able to, where at least they will accept an email from us, right? And they'll read that email and it's not just trashed. And so I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. We're out there. If you ever need some more help with that, stuff like that, I think I've tried a million different things. Some work, some don't, but it's always a struggle. So I thank y'all for your hard work. I thank y'all for staying on this call tonight and everything. I'm sure y'all are tired. I'm getting there for sure. But I just thank y'all for the time and the opportunity to be able to talk with you guys, and have a blessed week. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So at this time, we are going to go to Q&As. And thank you so much for typing your comments into the chat box. And we'll continue to take as many questions as we have time to. So our first question is for Jayme. Is there an online resiliency training option for key spouses?
So there is, and it's going to be different at every unit. So you do want to reach out to your community support coordinator. They fall right under the wing, and you'll be able to find out what is available as far as virtual options. A lot of times they're willing to work with the key spouses, and that way they can kind of coordinate and get a whole group. Because for resilience training, it's always better to have it with a larger group of individuals, whether it's virtual or in person.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much, Jayme. And for Ms. Slocum, what might you suggest to help with key spouse involvement?
Oh, sure. Yep. With key spouse involvement, you mean getting key spouses involved in the unit, or getting spouses more involved in the unit? If they can elaborate a little bit more on that question.
I think it is a two-part question. And number one, if you don't have that many people coming forward to be a key spouse,
Okay. So one of the things we did when Mark was the IG was we had a meet and greet as the commander and this and spouse. But I think the commander can do a meet and greet with the key spouses, and the commander personally invited all of the spouses to attend the meet and greet at the unit where the active duty member was watching their own kids at lunchtime, and the spouses came outside and Mark addressed the unit, the spouses only, and just talked a little bit about his philosophy and how he wanted people to feel included. We offered free lunch, Mark and I paid for it, and used that as an opportunity to bring people out, and people wanted to hear from him, and that gave us a chance to make that connection, and bring the group of spouses together and not have to worry about childcare so much. But then we gave the floor to the key spouses that were in existence so that people could meet them and learn about them, and mention that we had a couple other key spouse vacancies. And so that these spouses now knew Mark and me as a command team, met our key spouses and mentioned that there's a vacancy. We need more people like these awesome 2 key spouses that we have. Or is anyone else willing to volunteer? And that kind of kickstarted our connection, and we did a monthly meet and greet like that. And so, but our first one started because Mark invited them and I invited on the spouse side, and we tag teamed in the marketing to get that first event to happen. So that's something that the commander can do to help foster the spouses to come together and provide an opportunity to talk about the vacancies that may be in existence. Over to you, Mark, if you have any additions for that.
Yeah, I think for commanders, the biggest thing you can do is make the key spouses the cool kids and the source of information. So we made a text group with all of our key spouses that anytime there was an update, whether it be, there was it could have been a bomb notification at the school or something like that, or gate closed, but with hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever. We made a all group of text information to send out to the key spouses. So I would lead turn. I'm not afraid to fight dirty. So I would get about 5 minutes in front of telling the rest of the unit and tell the key spouses first, and keep feeding in to let the spouses know first. But make the key spouses the source of valid information, or where to get the valid information, because rumors are going to fly and people will fill the void of information with rumor and innuendo if you don't fill it first. So the key spouses were the source for that. And then if you're at a base that's got something cool to do and you can invite all the key spouses to do it, we had tankers at our base, and we did a key spouse tanker ride with our sister wing, and all the key spouses were posting pictures and said, hey, I got to go on this tanker ride. I can see F-15s refuel because all the key spouses got to go. That attracts a lot of people too. Hearts apart dinners for deployers, having key spouses, they get t-shirts and name tags and that type of things. A cute little saying, calm squad would say, keep calm and contact your key spouse, or something like that. And I think those are just things to make the key spouses the source of valid information. And eventually people will catch on and say, hey, I respect my key spouse. Maybe I want to be a key spouse. They helped me. That's all I got. Over.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we're going to go into part 2 of the question, and we're going to go to Mr. Bozung. And if the spouses are reluctant to become involved, especially during COVID over the past year and a half, what are your thoughts on how to engage further with spouses?
Oof. If there was an easy answer, I'd have it. I would say that I haven't necessarily found an easy answer or cracked the code. What I would recommend is to try different avenues. We're doing this virtually. That is a technology that people are becoming more comfortable with, and in general, people are getting better practice at doing it better. So you can have Zoom meetings, to try to reach out to people if you get it advertised out, and you can meet at different times. So a lot of times we try to, if you're meeting at the same time, you're probably missing 2/3 of your audience. Likewise with male spouses, earlier he mentioned, mill-to-mill spouses, stay-at-home dads, and then you have professional, civilian male spouses. Those are 3 different categories. I likely have, as a stay-at-home dad, I probably have more in common with stay-at-home moms than I do with working dads. And likewise, time-wise, I'm probably have different openings. Calling around dinner is not easy for me. So that would be my advice. Try to engage different avenues. Try to reach out to different groups and use technology. And then every event that there is some kind of attendance, try to have some kind of presence. So hopefully that helps.
Yes, so much. Thank you. And we've got some more questions, but it looks like we have almost run out of time. And so I want you to know that if your question was not answered, we are going to follow up and make answers available to all your questions in chat. And so we'll provide the link for this recording along with a wealth of other information to everyone on the call. So we're going to conclude our Q&As at this point, and I'm going to turn the floor back over to Ms. Randi Ramcharan.
All right, thank you so much. Theresa, thank you to all our Key Spouse panelists. We really appreciate your contributions and for taking the time to be with us today. So that was a full 3 hours. Thank you for sticking with us. We hope you found this session helpful. We do have a post-event survey, so please don't log off yet. But before we get there, I'm going to turn it back over to Mrs. Raymond and Mrs. Brown for any closing comments.
Thank you, Randi. What an awesome morning this afternoon, whatever it may be in your world, but just a great session. And to all our Key Spouses, thank you for sharing your time. We hope you found the information very helpful to you and the families you serve. I know that I personally learned a lot today, and I also loved all the side chats and connections that happened. And I'm so happy for all of you that maybe met someone new or connected. And to the team who put today together, our heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Vandenberg and to Ms. Randi Ramcharan and your team, Randi. I don't know how you did it with all the technical prowess you have, but y'all didn't miss a beat today. So thank you very much. And also like to thank our team members at the Air Force Personnel Center for your input and help and support. I just like to give a shout out to their Facebook page, Airmen and Family Division. If you haven't liked it, please do so. And it always has some great information to keep us updated. And they also had something posted yesterday about a career opportunity. So Airmen and Family Division, please like that. Finally, I'd like to say thank you to all of our panel members today. Sue Hoppen, Marcus Beauregard, Stan Kurtz, Dr. Bradford, Mike Coltrane, Erica Slayton, Ashley Jackson, and to our phenomenal Key Spouse Best Practice team, panel members. Thank you for sharing your tried and true procedures. All of you are an inspiration because of the devotion, time, and effort you put into this role as a Key Spouse. So thank you for making a difference. And thank you all for today, and look forward to our next engagement. And over to you, Shireen.
Thank you, Molly. What an incredible amount of information presented here today. We so appreciate all of our panelists who are here today, to include your peer Key Spouses for participating. As Molly mentioned, Sue Hoppen, Marcus Beauregard, Stan Kurtz, Dr. Deborah Bradford, Mike Coltrane, Erica Slayton, Ashley Jackson, and our amazing Key Spouses for sharing their best practices. Thank you all for being here today. To our Key Spouses in attendance, thank you for sharing 3 hours of your day with us. I hope you were able to provide. Sorry, I can't speak either. Apparently, I haven't had enough tea. I hope we were able to provide useful information for you and your families in your unit. We hope to follow up and get back to you on any questions that weren't answered today. Time is always so short during these sessions. As you well know, when information is shared, we all become knowledgeable. Robert Ingersoll's quote, "We rise by lifting others," is so fitting. Please feel free to share your resources with those you serve. Feedback is critical to helping us serve you as you help your units and families. Please take a few minutes to fill out the event survey that's coming up. It's the only way to ensure these events are meeting your needs. What were our positives and where do we need to improve? And thank you, and thank you again to the almost 1,200 Key Spouses and 700 Key Spouse mentors who filled out the Key Spouse surveys. Your response shows how much you care, are passionate, and want to see this program succeed. And we appreciate your willingness to be that change. We are getting ready to launch another survey targeted at the commanders. Yes, the commanders, as they are a large part of this program. With both perspectives, we will be better able to shape the future of the Key Spouse program. Thank you for being here today. I learned quite a bit today, and I hope you did as well. Your dedicated service toward our airmen and guardians is an inspiration, and we are thankful for what you do. We look forward to seeing you at your base and maybe at the next engagement series. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Raymond, Mrs. Brown. We're going to put up the survey here in just a second. So please do take just a few minutes to fill that out. It is how we can continue to make these better and tailored to what you need. And then lastly, just a couple more administrative things. We've reposted the handouts in the chat. We will email them out. And I have seen so many resources in the chat. So we're going to collect those together as well and send those out as part of the email that we send as a post wrap up so that you can have that all in one place since it's all through the chat right now. So thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it. Take care and have a good rest of your day.